I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHack's Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is what women want. Welcome to the age-old problem. Men have been seeking an answer to this question for millennia. Even Sigmund Freud confessed that this remained an enigma for which he had no solution. However, at the risk of hubris, I will have to respectfully disagree with the good doctor. And I'm going to put forth in this very video my answer to this question. I'll begin by answering the question more generally, in the sense of an explanation that holds true over time, and close by answering the question more specifically, in the sense of what women today want in the modern social milieu. Let's get to it. The simplest way to explain what women want in general terms is this. Women want what other women want. There it is. Women want what other women want. It's true, but kind of unsatisfying, especially because we very quickly run into a chicken and the egg type of problem. Namely, if women want what other women want, how do those other women decide what they want? In response to this, we might have to consider female desire to be a kind of emergent phenomenon that is normatively rooted in a certain time and place. Consider women's fashion. Yes, the designers in Milan and New York already know what they're going to be pushing for the spring lineup 2 years from now. They're attempting to influence taste, but they cannot dictate it. Despite their best efforts, the particular look that will go viral in any given season is still anyone's guess. It just kinda emerges out of the profusion of individual choices at the population level. And once that look gets established, because it's adopted by a critical mass of women, it becomes the standard against which individuals are compared, for as long as it remains the norm. And this is how, in a given time and place, a sizable majority of women always seem to kinda look the same, despite the fact that their fashions are constantly changing. Make sense? A lot of female culture is normative, despite the fact that those norms are always changing. It's kind of like a flocking instinct, and there may be plausible explanations for this phenomenon. Consider the distribution of most traits across gender. While most men and women's distributions are more alike than not, there is a consistent effect that we tend to observe at the population level. That is, irrespective of the trait measured, women's distributions tend to be more peaked, more congregated toward the mean, whereas men's distributions tend to be flatter, creating longer tails in either direction. This means that, relatively speaking, a greater proportion of women tend to be average, whereas a greater proportion of men are more likely to be either abject failures or rampant successes. On some level, nature has chosen males to be the sex on which it experiments. It takes bigger risks with males, and sometimes those risks pay off, and a lot of times they don't. However, risk-taking is an aspect of successful reproductive fitness in males in a way it just isn't with females. As I've said before, the biggest risk you can take as a man is not taking a risk. If you don't do something to stand out in some way as a man, then life will pass you by. You will be unnoticed by your fellow man, and you will be ignored by women. The average man is invisible to others. This isn't true for women. Most average women can be reasonably assured of being selected by someone. This someone might not be the man they prefer, but most women do not end up alone due to a lack of interest, which can't be said the same for men. So if the successful outcome is more or less assured, why would women, or females more generally, expose themselves to unnecessary risk? What would they have to gain? Evolutionary pressures have pushed women toward the center, which is generally the safest place to be. Just consider how differentially men and women value safety and security. It's well documented that men on the whole are much more comfortable with risk and uncertainty than women are. They kind of have to be. And it's this preference for safety and security that motivates women to keep a close watch on what other women are doing. Because what most other women are doing constitutes the fattest part of the distribution curve, irrespective of what that curve is measuring, and this is where the greatest safety and security resides. Like fish in a shoal, each individual is closely monitoring where the group is moving, because if they guess wrong and the individual turns left when the shoal turns right, that little fish might find itself very vulnerable and very exposed. And this close intersex observation doesn't stop with fashion trends. Women are looking to other women for information on how to live their lives more generally. A critical mass of female behavior is an indication of where the fattest part of the curve might be, alignment with which will afford the greatest possibility of social safety. If you appreciate the insights on this channel, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on a copy of my book, The Value of Others. Over the course of 432 pages, I delve deep into my economic model of relationships and explain the behavior of both men and women in the game of mating and dating. I also provide a lot of actionable advice on how to get and keep more of what you want in the sexual marketplace. Once you read The Value of Others, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. So, that's the answer to the question of what women want on a very high level. And this explanation implies that to understand what women want more specifically, we would need to observe how a critical mass of women are behaving in any given time and place. Consider how we would answer that question a few generations ago. What did most women want? Well, what were most women doing? They weren't trying to be boss bitches or ladies who lunch. They wanted to be housewives. Like that was the career most women were aiming at 70 years ago. Now, some people would argue that this historical behavior is conclusive evidence that it's in the best interests of all women to raise kids and take care of homes. And I don't necessarily see it that way. Obviously, women have been evolutionarily selected for traits that facilitate motherhood, traits like gentleness and nurturing, and they may experience satisfaction in expressing those traits in their individual lives. But we also can't ignore the fact that there has been a noticeable lack of optionality with respect to women's life choices for a very long time. When women historically have become mothers and housewives, I don't think we can simply conclude that they were expressing their biologically programmed preferences in vacua. Because when they looked to other women and saw their mothers and grandfathers and sisters and girlfriends all doing the same thing, that was a strong signal as to where the fattest part of the behavioral curve was located. And certainly, deviating from this norm carried great risks to women historically. My point here is that it's difficult to tease apart how much of this phenomenon is due to biology and how much of it is due to culture. Great. So let's fast forward to the present moment. If you're a woman looking out at other women, especially through the lens of social media, what are you going to see a critical mass of them doing? It's definitely not getting married and having kids, at least not exclusively. There is still a norm, but that norm has shifted, and it will continue to shift continuously. And what I'd like to argue is that what you see a critical mass of women doing today is everything. And that's what women want. Everything. Women today want to have all the experiences. They want to have a career and earn a master's degree and start a business and have a baby and get 1 million followers and visit all the countries and eat all the foods and get married and find themselves and take a yoga retreat and blow up the scene, etc., etc., etc. Women want to ride all the rides at Disneyland. They're like completionist gamers. They don't necessarily want everything in the sense of material possessions, but in the sense that they want to have every emotional, relational, and social experience that other women anywhere seem to be having. And collectively, across the various highlight reels they consume on social media, they believe this can and should be possible for them. And this is an important clue. What really motivates the modern woman is FOMO, the fear of missing out. Thanks to social media, it appears that other women are doing all of the things, which sends the cue that doing all of the things is the fattest part of the behavioral curve, which, as we've discussed, is where the safety is. And I think this is a big part of why so many women today are making themselves unnecessarily anxious and stressed and depressed. The vast majority of women cannot do all of the things, which basically sends a constant signal to them that they are drifting out of the shoal. Their emotions are responding to this perception of danger. However, this is not conscious in all but the most self-aware individuals. FOMO, as a guiding principle, also helps to explain a lot of what would otherwise remain baffling about the decisions of modern women. If the goal is to do all of the things, then an essential question that must be considered in any decision, conscious or not, must be, will doing this prevent me from doing that? That is, if A prevents B, and I want both A and B, then if possible, I need to be able to secure B before A. They are loath to choose any path that forecloses any other. This is a big part of why women tend to use their 20s, the decade when they are most likely to secure a long-term relationship on the most favorable terms, to advance their education and careers rather than start a family. Given that women's normalized sexual marketplace value tends to decrease over time as their youth, beauty, and fertility fade, men look at this behavior and shake their heads. It's almost like watching someone set fire to a pile of money. It's like, what a waste. However, from the perspective of modern women, this decision makes perfect sense. After all, it's what a critical mass of other women seem to be doing. What's more, starting a family young would very likely make it much more difficult to experience certain things, possibly permanently, which would obstruct the current prime directive to do all of the things. Like a young mother probably isn't going to Cancun with her girlfriends, or giving a TED Talk on mindfulness, or eating gelato in Rome and sushi in Tokyo, or getting celebrated as one of the 30 under 30. Female logic dictates that it's better to get those things before settling down for completionist purposes, otherwise FOMO. Now, you might argue that starting a family later in life, assuming she's able to do so, will also prevent certain experiences, like, say, watching her grandkids graduate from college, or celebrating her golden wedding anniversary. And this is true. Choosing any path in life closes off others. This is inescapable. The way out of this is to realize that women don't actually want to do all of the things. They just want to do all of the things that a critical mass of other women have decided are worth doing. They conveniently ignore everything else. And this, like fashion, changes with time. In any case, there you have it. Women want what other women want. And today, what other women want is to do all of the things. They are motivated by FOMO, and in the service of that desire, they are incentivized to postpone foreclosure for as long as possible. Accept these principles, and the behavior of modern women becomes entirely comprehensible. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please, send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, as it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. I know you know someone out there who could benefit from hearing this episode. It's kind of an important one. Do your part, send it to someone who you know would like to hear what I have to say. I have a few other things that I can pitch to you now. If you'd like to join my free weekly newsletter, in which I write original content that I don't post here, or book a paid one-on-one consultation with yours truly, you can do so on my website. There's also my book, The Value of Others, in which I explore the sexual marketplace through the lens of behavioral economics, and my private member community, The Captain's Quarters, in which I have bi-monthly group consultations and Q&As with invited guests. Both of these are excellent additional resources. If you like the content you see here, you're definitely going to like what you find in both of those locations. Check it all out. It's all in the links to the description, in the description below. As usual, thanks for your support, and thank you for listening.